Hello, friends. Welcome to the Thinning of the Veil podcast. I'm your host, Tia Smith. Super excited today. I have my guest, Ruth Solomon, on. Um, Usually, how I do these things is how we met. We haven't met yet. I guess we kind of did. We did a Zoom meeting, but she reached out to me and she is involved with such an extraordinary part, I believe, of the gathering and certainly unique. I haven't heard what she does and her perspective of the gathering. And so I'm grateful that she was willing to come on. So Ruth, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do, what you're passionate about, and what fills your time?
Okay, thank you very much. I am a professional genealogist. I got accredited back in 2018. I've been doing genealogy since I was a teenager. And then I decided to see if I could cut it with the professionals. And that professional road has led me on many journeys. And I'm currently spending most of my time working in what's called military repatriation. And I'm a subcontractor. So I contract with the company that has a contract with the government, with one of the military organizations. And we work for an organization called DPAA, the Department of POW MIA Accreditation Association. So they are charged with finding all the missing military men and from World War II forward. So they will send us a serviceman's card of someone that they think that they possibly have remains for. And it's amazing that they are still recovering remains from as far back as World War II. And then my job is to build out that serviceman's family tree. And I follow certain DNA lines down and find living individuals within the family. And then I'm their first contact. I reach out to those family members and tell them that the military is researching their servicemen and ask them to verify their contact information. And then I send that contact information to the military, and then they directly contact them about donating DNA in order to make a positive or negative identification of the remains that they have. And it's fascinating. It's stressful because 90% of the people that I call think I'm a scam.
Of course,
And
yeah.
don't answer the phone. In today's world, I would hang up on me too. And I always tell them that when somebody actually answers the phone, thank you for answering the phone. I would hang up on me too. And it's interesting. There's kind of three different responses that I get. If it's a family member that knows about this military person, usually a niece or nephew is a lot of who I'm contacting. And then they're excited and they're like, oh, really? Wow, how exciting. Yes, I want to participate. Let me call all my siblings. Let me call all my cousins. And they're excited. And so that's the best case scenario. And that's always exciting to see and be a part of. Then sometimes the middle case scenario is someone who's like, I think I've heard of them. Maybe
Yeah.
let me get you in touch with the genealogist in the family. Let me and then those families, I usually get a thank you back saying, thank you for bringing our family back together, because we've kind of drifted apart. We forgot about this individual. Thank you for bringing him back to our attention, bringing our family back together. And that's really neat to see, because I think that is part of the gathering, is bringing families back together.
Yeah.
And then I always feel bad for those individuals that came from a small family and there's no one that remembers them, no one that knows with them. I'm reaching out to third, fourth cousins, just saying, can you please help this serviceman? Can you please help bring him home? And those are a little more difficult for me, a little more heart-wrenching.
So you are part of the gathering within the military community, what are
Yes.
some of, I mean, I can't imagine trying to locate a family that really doesn't know anything about this
Yeah.
family member. Do you feel guided sometimes with trying to find the family and really the spirit, like you said, of the gathering that encompasses trying to find this one particular family so that this person can be remembered and, really the story completed?
Um, it's amazing. And within our group, we share stories of occasionally I'll make a phone call and they'll be like, wow, I can't believe you just called me. I was just at the memorial 2 months ago. Or my grandson just called me and they have to write a report. And they were just asking me if we have any veterans who lost their lives during the war, and we've just been talking about this person, or I just wrote an article for my local VFW about this uncle. It's always amazing when you find that one individual and they're like, I can't believe you called me because this just happened. This person's really just been on our mind. It's almost like they've been prepping the family for the call.
Amazing. I think the Lord is in so many details of the gathering, not only with temple and family history work, but really bringing families together,
Yes.
um, even if they're not members of the church, because I mean, eventually, all the work needs to be done, but really it's about bringing families back together. That's
Yeah.
the whole point of the gathering. So tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about your Gathering of Israel experience background. It sounds like it's been quite a span.
It's been a long time. So I literally inherited my passion for family history work and my family history work from my grandmother. Um, so in our family, it started at my mom's baptism in 1950 in Atlanta. My mom was baptized in Atlanta. And at her baptism, my grandmother was in attendance. She was not interested in joining the church, but she came to support her daughter. And one of the elders noticed my grandma sitting in the back crying. And so he came up and asked her what was wrong. And she said, and this is the really weird thing, is that the hymns that they played at my mother's LDS baptism were Protestant funeral hymns. So
Nice.
the old rugged cross was one my mom always talked about. And so we sang that at my mom's funeral because of this story, because of the history that it had in her family. And so this young elder came to my grandmother and was talking to her. And she said, the songs that we're singing today were the songs that were sung at my mother's funeral. And so I'm just remembering her. And thinking about her, and the veil was taken from this young elder's eyes, and he said, well, she is here. And he pointed up to the stand, and he said, actually, the stand is filled with your ancestors. And he pointed to the seat that her mother was in and said, she is there. And they're excited. They're excited about this choice that your daughter is making because it's going to open doors for them. And my grandmother didn't understand what that meant, but she was very touched, and went home thinking about that. Um, a few months later, my mom was called on a mission, and that's a whole nother story.
Awesome.
And um, and when she left, she had started her pedigree chart. And so she stopped by her parents' house and to drop off all of her stuff. And she handed her mother, my grandmother, this pedigree chart and said, this is really important. Hold on to it. Don't lose it. And if you can fill in any blanks, that would be great. Well, my grandmother was a bookkeeper and she didn't like blank spaces. She didn't like empty things. And while my mom was on her mission, my grandparents joined the church.
Mm.
And so that empty pedigree chart started my grandmother's journey. And my grandmother lived in Anniston, Alabama. So far in the 1950s, far away from the church. My mom ended up settling in Mesa, Arizona. And so my grandparents had to travel to Mesa, which was the nearest temple.
Wow.
In, I think it was probably about 1952, 53 that they came and were sealed to my mom and got their own temple work done. But my grandmother, doing her family history from 1952 to 1982, those 30 years, she sent in a family group sheet a week to Salt Lake
Wow.
to be approved for temple work. She was not able to do the temple work herself because there was no temple, but she would have it sent to the Mesa temple, and my mom would work through it. My mom and dad would work through getting the temple work done. But she did amazing work. And it's amazing that in that time period, she was writing letters. She was looking at microfiche, microfilm books. There were no computers. And yet she was submitting a family a week
That's crazy.
to have their temple work done.
I often wonder if we even understand what the early, like my grandmother and stuff, what they had to go through to put information together and then submit it. I mean, we literally just push a button right now. We take for granted the sacrifice involved in that, but I believe that was part of their yearning, was to keep trying to find the information so that their families can be reunited, and setting actually like a base for the rest of us to come in years later.
That's exactly what she did for me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm grateful for their early like not giving up, and it's such a good reminder to all of us that we have it actually pretty easy.
We do. We really do, and it's amazing. And I always knew that my grandmother told me from a very young age that I was to carry on her work. My grandmother died when I was 12, and my grandpa didn't like the family history work. It took too much time away from him.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So when my mom went back, that was the only thing that he would give my mom of my grandmother's. And he's like throwing it out of the house, boxes and boxes. Take it. You can have this. And all of it had my name and my birth date, all of her books in the front of it. And I'm number 5 of 6 children. I'm not the oldest. I'm not the
Wow.
It didn't go to my mom. It came to me. And somehow my grandmother knew. I don't know.
That didn't stem
I was
from
12.
Okay, so that didn't stem from a conversation you had with her, or
I always knew that I was going to inherit it, but I didn't know why. I was just a kid.
right. Yeah.
And
Wow.
so it sat in the storage until I turned 18, and then I started to feel guilty that I hadn't done anything with it. And that year, it was like the mid to late 80s, and we were still on typewriters. But the family group sheets used to be those big ones.
Oh yeah. I'm from the late 80s as well. I know exactly what you're talking
and they had just created the 8.5 by 11 family group sheets and pedigree charts.
Right.
And so I asked my mom, I was like, what do I do? How do I get started? I have all of this research of my grandmother's, all of this. What do I do? And she said, well, why don't you retype it all onto the small sheets? So that way you've touched every name. And so I did that. I spent 2 years retyping everything that my grandma had done onto the smaller family group sheets. My friends thought I was crazy. Here's an 18-year-old, and what does she do for fun? She types family history, family group sheets and pedigree charts.
Yeah.
And the rules for submission for the temple had lightened in those 6 years. And so just in retyping what the research my grandmother had done, I had 300 names that I was able to submit to the temple.
Wow. Because
And
you weren't old enough yet to do the work yourself, right?
no, I was still submitting it. I hadn't gone through, I did the baptisms.
Wow.
And then and at that point in time, you sent them to a specific temple, and they kept them at the family history at the temple name desk, and then you went and got your cards. And that's actually how I knew my husband was the right person. I hadn't planned on telling you this story. When I was dating him, he told me that he went to the temple regularly. And so I was like, oh, can you please go and take one of my names through whenever you go? And so he's like, sure. And so we had only been dating for like a month or 6 weeks. And for my birthday, he brought me 10 endowment cards that he had done for me.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, wow,
Sold.
you're the one. And so he takes that as his responsibility to do the temple work. I do the research, he does the temple work. And he teased me one time because in the 36, 37 years we've been together, he's only had to go to the temple once without a family name. And he really harassed me that day because like, you dropped the ball.
No one's perfect. No one's perfect.
So
So how did these experiences then, I mean, clearly you were drawn to it at a younger age. How did these experiences then lead to, because when you're talking about the span of that many years, surely you're having family history, thinning of the veil
yes,
experiences. There's no way that
yes,
you can't when you're that
yes.
involved. So why don't you kind of start to tell me a little bit about some of those experiences that are near and dear to your heart?
Okay. First, I want to make one clarification just as a professional genealogist. And I know lately the church has changed the names that you can submit or take to the temple. And so I want to talk about that really quick and my philosophy on that. As a professional genealogist, I have always been extremely careful to follow the church's guidelines. I have never submitted a client's name or put any of that information onto FamilySearch. I am very careful to keep my FamilySearch is my stuff and my professional life separate when it comes to temple work. And that's the church's policy. That's a professional genealogist's policy. And so I just want to make that very clear in case any of my clients happen upon this video. I want them to understand that these two lives that I'm talking about are very separate.
Okay.
And I firmly believe that. And that is why the church has had to buckle down and make it now that you can only reserve names to do temple work for your family members because there were too many people not following these guidelines.
I
And
think
so I just want to make it very clear that I have always and will always follow those guidelines.
And I think that's helpful to give maybe a little bit different perspective because I know when that rule changed, there was a lot of
A lot
people
of people
who had
got
to
upset.
struggle. Yeah. So I love that you would give your point of view on that, and maybe one of the reasons why, because a lot of us are not professionals at genealogy. We have there's a lot of us who are trying to do our best. So I appreciate that you would be willing to share that part of your journey with us.
Yeah, because it's something I'm in the genealogy world. There's a lot of genealogists that don't trust LDS genealogists and won't hire them because they're afraid that, this stuff is going to be inappropriately shared. And so
Sure.
I just
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that from here on out, the things I talk about are my family stories and my research with my family and
Awesome.
how the spirit has led me to those things. There are a few things that my family members have taught me. Oh, okay. And I was trying to figure out how to describe what this feels like because I have never, as of yet, been visited in person by a family member. I haven't seen any angels yet. I pray for them all the time, but I haven't got there yet. I haven't heard a voice, but I do feel their presence and I do feel their guidance, but I was trying to just figure out how to describe what that feels like. And so I was reading section 128 of the Doctrine and Covenants last night and today, kind of in prepping for this. And this is how Joseph describes it. In verse 1, he says, "And now I resume the subject of the baptism for the dead, as that subject seems to occupy my mind and press itself upon my feelings strongly." And I was like, that's it. That's exactly what it feels like. It's just constantly in my thoughts and in my heart. And it's usually a specific idea or a specific phrase that this is what I need to do. This is what I need to focus on. Um, and so my experiences kind of break down into a few different things. And one of the things I want to talk to people, because there's a lot of people that come from long LDS backgrounds that are like, there, it's all done. There's nothing left, and they don't know how to get involved. And so one thing that my ancestors have taught me is that they want to be remembered. If their temple work has already been done, they still want to be remembered. And they want their struggles, like we were talking about the military men, and the ultimate sacrifice that they and their families made. Our ancestors want their sacrifices that they made for us to be remembered. Those first converts want that sacrifice to be remembered. The immigrants that moved to a new land, they want to be remembered for their sacrifice. Every mother, father, grandfather with sleepless nights and long work hours, they want to be remembered. They want their posterity to understand the sacrifices that they made. So back in 2005, I had the opportunity to go on a family history trip with my best friend to Central New York. And we spent 2 weeks doing nothing but family history. It was amazing. And and my best friend had some great breakthroughs, and she came home with a lot of research to do and really excited. And I found one person, an uncle that had moved, and I was able to figure out where he had moved to. But the breakthroughs that I was praying for and pleading for didn't happen. And so I came home discouraged. I'd spent all this time, all this money. I'd left my young family for 2 weeks, and I was just really discouraged and doubting whether it was worth it. And that night, when I was in that mind frame, my room was full. I didn't see them, but I felt them. It was full. That's all I can say. And they wanted me to know that it was worth it because I knew them now. I had sat at their graves. I had sat in the pews of the churches that they worshiped at. I had seen their homes, their places of business. I knew them. I knew them now. And they were so grateful for that. They were so grateful that I had taken that time to come to know them and where they lived and where they worshiped and where they were buried. And they wanted me to share that. That was the message I got. We are grateful that you came to know us, and now you need to share that. You need to let the other people know who we are and what our lives were like. And so I encourage everybody the gathering is not just about temple work. It's about remembering.
I so appreciate that you bring that up, because I think sometimes we get so caught up in the actual work that we don't really even go in and read their stories. What I feel like is that it becomes a task at that point. And yes, we have
checkbox.
Yeah. And we have these amazing revelatory experiences leading and guiding us. And I'm glad that you're also bringing up the way that you have thinning of the veil experiences. And I think that's what I want everyone to hear, is that everyone is going to experience this spirit of Elijah in different ways. And just because you're experiencing it one way doesn't mean that you're failing or whatever. It's just because that's the way it's going to speak and it's going to be involved in your life. But I feel like more of these personal experiences come as we get to know them, as we really understand their sacrifice and their yearnings and their longings. Some of these people, I mean, they've been born, they've hundreds and hundreds of years. And the first time that their name is spoken in those hundreds of years is by one of their descendants or relatives, in the temple. But they're not just names,
Yeah,
right?
the people.
They're people. And they are the reason why we are here and have the opportunities that we have is because of their willingness to sacrifice for their posterity's sake.
Yeah.
So thank you I love that you brought that in there because I think sometimes that's a half of the work that we don't take the time to do.
Yeah. And you just led into my next story, and that was their sacrifice for their posterity's sake. And so it was a really busy time in my life. My son was getting married. I had a lot going on. And on my trip to New York, I had got to know one of my immigrant ancestors, one of my German immigrant ancestors. And him and his wife's tombstones were actually written in German. It was really neat. And so I started researching German Lutheran church records. And I happened upon this German Lutheran church in Rochester, New York. And the records were all written in German, even though it was in New York. And his family, his descendants attended this church for generations. And his son that was my great grandfather moved to a different part of New York. So he wasn't in there, but eight of his siblings were in there and all their descendants. And so I collected a lot of records of these people, but up to this point in time, my goal had been to just extend my line and then do my direct ancestors' families. So I was just working on those little families, but then collecting all the other records. And so at this really busy time in my life, I could not get this great German great grandfather off my line. He kept telling me, "You have the record of all of my descendants, and I want to be sealed to all of my grandkids." And he just kept stressing this, all. I need all of them. And I went back and I started looking at the records. And again, it was 200 to 300 of his descendants that I had collected through this church. And I was like, I can't do that right now. I'm planning a wedding. My life is crazy right now. But he would not leave me alone. He was insistent that I had all of these records and I needed to make this happen. And now as a grandmother, I understand that.
Yeah.
As a mother, I didn't understand that. As a grandmother, I understand that. I want all of my descendants as they keep going on and on. It's amazing how a grandmother's heart changes you. And I understand now
Yeah.
that point of view.
Yeah.
But he was the first one to teach me that.
So you made time to
I
work
did
on.
make time to work on getting all I don't remember, it was somewhere between 200 to 300 names temple ready, submitted, and then start working on getting those done.
I find it interesting that sometimes personalities will pop up in these thinning of the veil experiences where it's a certain member of the family, and maybe that's because it's one of their gifts or spiritual strengths to be able to.
There are.
Yeah.
I have found that too. There are certain people in each family that kind
Yeah.
of take the lead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure it's kind of maybe a calling on the other side in some form. I'm not quite sure how it all works out, but I just always find it so interesting that it seems like a certain person will deliver the message, and like you said, it will press upon your mind over and over. And you finally, like, there's sometimes I finally just really shout out loud, okay, okay, okay. Like,
Yeah, that was kind of fun
doing
because I
it.
kept putting him off, saying, "Not right now, I'm busy after
Yeah,
my
yeah,
son's
yeah.
wedding." And then finally I had to do that. Okay.
Yes.
I
I
will
think that's
block out a
important.
couple hours every week somewhere, somehow.
Well, and I think it's important for people to realize, look, we all go through this overwhelming sometimes of there's so much work to do. There's so many people that need help, but you're trying to live your own mortal
Yeah.
celestial
Life on top of
existence.
it.
And it's such a pain sometimes. You're like, if I could just be terrestrial, this would always be so much better. But I think it's in that the gathering sacrifice and and the spirit of Elijah that draws you in. And when you make time for that, like Sister Nelson has
Yeah.
testified of, the other things in your life become easier and less um, on fire, I guess, right? It kind of
Yeah.
shifts and moves, either that or you're given more ability to cope with what's in front of you.
Yeah. And you're given, and then that ties right in. You're doing great. You're tying
Oh,
my stories
good.
all together. Ties right into, and also I have come to learn that when you put the time out there, when you show them that you're serious,
Yep.
then they start to help you. They
Yep.
start to help you. And I have two stories where it's amazing that I thought I had found everybody in these families. And one of these was his descendants. I had just taken a set of a family through, because I kind of worked at one family at a time. And I had just taken a family through. I got them all sealed together, and I was starting to work on the next family. And I got an email out of the blue from a distant cousin I don't know. And she said, "You're missing somebody in your family tree." And it was from this family that I had just sealed together like 2 weeks before. And she says, "And I'm the only person on the face of the earth that knows about this individual." And I was like, "What?" Wait a minute. And she says, "My grandmother had a twin sister that died as an infant." And she says, I have looked and looked for a birth record, for a death record, and all I can find is that there's a baby buried with the grandmother, but it just says baby." And she says, "I know her name because my grandmother always talked about her, and I know her birth date because she's a twin, and I know that she died before the age of 2."
Wow.
And that was perfect for me. That made it enough for me to go and have her sealed to this family. And I really felt in this instance that it was the mother
Of course it would
who
be.
who connected us, who was like, "Somebody's missing."
I am the
And
mother of twins. And
she
I
put
would
me,
for
yeah, you would
sure.
do that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so she put the only person on the face of the earth who had that information in touch with the person that she knew would make sure the work was done.
Wow.
And it was just amazing to me. And then that was on my grandfather's side. Then on my grandmother's side, a few years later, again, an email from a random cousin who says, "I have some letters from our joint great grandmother to her daughter, who was my ancestor. Would you be interested in copies of these letters from the 1800s?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, absolutely. That would be so cool to get insight into this family." And again, I thought that I'd done all the temple work for the family. I just was, interested in the insight that it would give me. And so as I'm reading through these letters, there's 2 funerals and 1 marriage mentioned in these letters. And none of these people's temple work had been done. The 2 funerals were of spinsters, older spinsters, so they didn't have any descendants. And it was pre 1850 census, so their names weren't there. But there was enough information that I was then able to go find the death record, because they mentioned the funeral dates and places and how they were related, and put them into the family. And then the marriage, again, there was enough information that I was able to tie this person into the family. So again, and in that instance, I'm not sure who it was on the other side putting this together, but I know that there was someone that was,
I
because
I think there's so many, and I think this goes back to really God caring about the one, because
Mhm.
there are so many people in situations on the other side of the veil that have either no descendants, little
Yeah,
babies in between censuses. There are no
yeah,
records for a ton of people on the other side of the veil. The miraculous indications that God is involved in the work is bringing about someone who may have information
to
getting
someone
it
who can do the work.
exactly, and that cares about doing the work, right? It's the spirit of Elijah, and that's what I love about the spirit of Elijah. It is not just falling upon members of the Church of
Oh
Jesus Christ
no,
of
it's
Latter-day
falling
Saints.
on the world.
It's falling on the whole world. And I believe that Satan is raging because of that. Um, I'm so grateful that the Lord sees fit in saving the one. And those are actually my favorite, is finding those lost ones that
Yeah,
have no posterity. They're not
yeah,
going to be punished because of their life situation. And
yeah,
I feel the Lord the most when I find those particular individuals who needed the help and who needed a miracle to be found.
yeah,
So I love, love, love that. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah. So, and just so grateful to be the one trusted
Yes.
with the information, that they trusted me, that I would do the work,
Yeah.
that they knew that when I read these letters, I would be looking for vital information
And you don't have to be a professional, right? You
and
don't have
relation.
to be a
No, you
fan.
don't have to.
No,
Anybody can put those
exactly.
pieces together.
Yes, and I believe it is the desire, if you desire to be involved in the gathering, and if you are consistently praying and asking for who needs help, the Lord will use you as an instrument in his hands in so many different ways that you never even comprehended or that you could feel like you could participate.
Yeah.
It's just the willing heart and the desire. God will do the rest, honestly.
Yeah. And I still remember that day when I had finished all the temple work from just typing. And now I needed to research and looking at everything that my grandmother had done and be like, I'm just a kid. How in the heck, what? Just feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to take the first step. I don't even, but it's just one step at a time. It's just learning one thing at a time. What I ended up doing is going to the Family History Center with my little baby in her car seat. And I would pretend that I knew what I was doing. I would just put in a random microfilm and scroll and then eavesdrop on everybody else and what they were talking about. And when they mentioned something I didn't know or a website I hadn't heard about, I was like, no, wait, what was that? How does that work?
Well, and I love that the Lord actually right now is making it so easy. Like sometimes you don't even have to go to the Family Search libraries.
Yeah.
You can just literally either call someone up on Family Search,
Mhm.
or there are tutorials that you can use. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and maybe we'll have you on. I started a new bit of the podcast called the
Mhm.
Gathering Academy. So maybe you can do a couple how-to videos as well. I
Oh,
think
that would be fun.
so. That was
Yeah.
not planned
Yeah.
during this podcast, but I felt like asking in front of
Sure,
everybody.
absolutely. I love teaching family history work.
Yeah,
That's the other thing I'm doing right now is teaching BYU Idaho's capstone course for their family history program. And I love to teach family history. That's
perfect.
my other passion as far as doing it is teaching it and sharing the information. I
Well, we'll
really
look
love that
forward to
because
you.
I remember that overwhelm. I remember
Yeah,
that
yeah, for sure.
this is beyond me. I can't do this. And it's just one step at a time,
Yeah.
and it's wonderful. And they do help you. That's my other story is about following your gut or following the spirit, because one of my end of the line ancestors is Benjamin Wheaton Keyes. And my mom and I often had this discussion. She always told me that Wheaton was his mother's maiden name. And I kept saying, no, it's not. It's just like, but it has to be. And I said, it's just not. And if you look at the Keys naming patterns, that's not the Keys naming patterns. If there's a maiden name in a Keys middle name, it's a grandmother's maiden name, not a mother's maiden name. I said, I can't find a single Keys that uses their mother's maiden name. It's always the grandmother's. And we had this debate for years and years, my mother and I. And his parents, I couldn't find. I knew his mother was Betsy. But his father died young, and I didn't know his mother's maiden name. And I looked for probably 10 years for her family, and I had done everything I knew to do. And I remember very vividly waking up one Sunday morning with the thought, go look at Betsy's neighbors on the census. I was like, okay. And I knew exactly what census it was too. I knew there's only one census where she's head of house and not and I was like, okay, I knew exactly what census. So I went, I looked up the census and I was like, oh, she's living between a couple of brothers. There's a Jacob Sanders and an Abner Sanders, and they're the same age, so they must be brothers and taking care of this young widow and helping her out. That's really nice. And so I'm supposed to look at these brothers. So I start researching these brothers and I come across a history for the town, and it says the brothers, Jacob, Abner, and Wheaton Sanders, moved to this town. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are her brothers. Not just two brothers, but these are her brothers. And so I started researching this family, and within 2 hours, I had proof that these were her brothers, that she fit into this family. And so then I went on FamilySearch to see, to plug her into this family to see what temple work had been done. And the temple work had been done for everyone except for Jacob and Abner. Again, the two that helped me find her were because the work had been extracted. They hadn't been sealed together, but the work had been extracted for this church in Massachusetts, and they were christened in a church in Rhode Island, just across the border. These two brothers were, so they hadn't been extracted and put in the family. And just, again, amazing that the two brothers that helped me find her were the ones that needed the temple work done.
So the moral of that story is don't dismiss odd thoughts, especially when you're doing this work, because it will lead you most generally all the time to places and spaces that you didn't know you needed to focus on.
And then again, it was so her maiden name was Sanders, and so she was Betsy Sanders, and her father was Benjamin Sanders, and her mother was Anna Wheaton. And so that gut feeling that it's the grandmother's maiden name, not the mother's maiden name, was right.
Right. Yep. I love that. I love that God is in all the little details. That's just amazing. So, do you have any more family history experiences you want to share?
The one last one is that they'll also fix mistakes.
Awesome.
So there was, again, this Keys line. Benjamin Wheaton had a brother, Nelson, who had a wife, Mary Ann. And I was trying to find Mary Ann's maiden name. And I looked and I looked and I couldn't find her maiden name. And then I found a deed that said from a man, and he gifted to his sister, Mary Ann Keys, some items. And I was like, yay, I've got her maiden name. And so since she was an in-law, I usually just, I don't really research any further. So I just put her maiden name down. I did her temple work, sealed her to her husband, and was good to go. And then a few months later, she just kept bugging me. I could not get her off my mind. And I'm like, why? Why can't I get her off my mind? I found her name. She's good to go. What's the problem? So then I started researching this man who said he was her brother, his family, and she didn't fit. There was another Mary Keys. There wasn't 9 months between her birth and the other children. She literally did not fit in this family. And I was like, I don't understand. He says this is his sister. And so then I started looking at his wife. And the second I saw his wife's name, Emma Taylor, I was like, that's her sister. It was his sister-in-law. And he had just used the term sister in the deed because I remembered that Emma Taylor, as a teenager, had been living with Nelson and Mary Ann Keys on a census. And I just thought that they were taking care of, a couple of neighbor kids.
Yeah.
But as soon as I saw the name, I knew, oh, that's the sister. And then I researched the Taylor family, and sure enough, that was her family. But again, I know that was not from me. I had done the work. I thought it was correct. There was no reason for me to question it.
Yeah.
But she knew it was wrong. And she kept her on my mind so that I would go back and look at it and fix the mistake and get her with the right family.
That's amazing. I feel like when you're involved in this work, of course you're going to make mistakes, and of course there's going to be errors. But I can't remember who said it. I've said it in an episode before. I've got so much information running through my head.
Yeah.
But they keep correct records on the other side of the veil. And you do your best, listen to the Spirit, and you will be guided when and if you need to go back and relook at something and change something, because that's also important too. But
Yeah.
don't be scared that you're going to make mistakes. And I think sometimes people get so worried, so
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't do anything because they feel like they're going to make a mistake. So the Lord knows where you're at. He knows he has imperfect people to work with, and it will all be okay in the end, right?
Yeah.
How have these experiences like helped you in the gospel of Jesus Christ? What kind of the doctrines have really been evident as you've done the gathering of Israel and temple and family history work?
One thing is that it has taught me to understand how the Spirit speaks to me. Like I talked about, I can recognize when a thought is not my own, when it's, and I don't know how to describe it except for kind of what I talked about, that it's insistent, it's frequent, and it comes at times when I'm not thinking about family history. Like I'll wake up, often I wake up first thing in the morning with a thought on my mind, that this is what I need to go and do today. And it's often a family I haven't thought about in a long time. So, well, and just again, tying into the rest of my life, it's just taught me more how to recognize how the Spirit speaks to me.
I love that. I think that has been one of the key things that I've learned, the principles and the doctrines. And I think that's why President Nelson, when he talks about Revelation, he always includes temple and family history work because it helps you to understand the Spirit and the way that it speaks to you, because you're in a work that necessitates feeling the Spirit and being involved with the Lord. And so you have you have more opportunities, I think, to really work with the Lord and work with the Spirit, which then turns into better revelation as a mother and as a grandma and as a wife, right? And so
Yeah.
I have appreciated that part of the work and also testify of that on like such a huge basis. That was the way I knew how to start this podcast. I knew when the Spirit spoke to me, and a lot of times I get words coming into my mind. And when he said, you need to testify of these things on a global basis, I'm like, you're crazy. I'm not quite sure how that is going to work, but I knew when those words were given to me and he spoke to me that way, I knew exactly what I needed to do because of all the work that I had done with temple and family history work. So I'm grateful for that. I echo that. Do you have any more principles or doctrines that you've learned through the gathering?
Just my testimony of the hastening of the work, of the hastening of the second coming, that things are progressing, that things are so close. I just want to, for those people that are new to family history, I just want to give a little history so that maybe they can see the hastening themselves. Because I think if you're jumping into it right now, you don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about what it was like in the late 80s, which wasn't that long ago. It was still typewriters, it was still microfiche, microfilm, etc. It was 1999 that FamilySearch was created. So it was the 90s when computers started to come online and things started to get put into the database. Then I want to I want to talk about three things. So I'm going to start with my grandma in 1950. When she joined the church, there were 8 temples. That's bizarre.
That is bizarre.
1 million members, and it took 1 to 2 months to get a name temple ready.
Wow.
Because you had to do the research, and that could take weeks, months, And so I'm just talking temple ready. From once you find the name, then you have to type out a family group sheet. You have to go to the Family History Center and look at the IGI to see if the temple work's been done. which is on a little microfiche card. Then you send snail mail to Salt Lake, send your family group sheet in. They verify whether or not the temple work's been done again. Then they send it back to you. And then they send it to the temple. And it took months, literally months, because it was still like that in the 80s when I started. It took months to get a name temple ready. So then move to the 1980s, there's now 40 temples. So we're getting better, and 7 million members, but it's still taking months to get a name temple ready. Today, 2025, 200 operating temples. I think it was 199 when I looked last night. And at conference, I'm betting there will be 400 announced because we're at 385.
Oh,
and
I'm
President
sure.
Nelson has been announcing 15 to 18 temples. So I'm pretty sure we're going to hit 400 temples announced at conference. In 35 years, we've gone from 40 to 400 or 200, however you want to look at it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And 17 million members. And it takes minutes.
Literally
minutes to research and get a name temple ready.
Yep.
It blows my mind. I remember as a child hearing that we called it a prophecy that temples would dot the earth.
Yeah.
We're there.
We must be the same age because I remember hearing the same. We are there.
We're there.
It is. Wow. Sorry, I remember
President
even
Nelson is fulfilling that prophecy. We are there.
Yeah. The majesty of the moment is right in front of our eyes. I mean, how many records are being added to FamilySearch on a daily basis? And it was a true army behind the scenes with missionaries called out to take pictures of these, old records. And then you had the people that were trying to convert the microfiche into a record that we could actually look at and seek and search after instead of having to go to the actual places.
Yeah. And then we started indexing, and we were thinking indexing was going to take us hundreds of years. And now AI is reading it, and we don't index anymore hardly. It's just AI taking over. The Lord, it just blows my mind how quick he is hastening it. And so I want to talk about FamilySearch and Doctrine and Covenants, section 128. So I said FamilySearch was created in 1999. And at that point in time, there were 3 separate databases. There was the IGI, the ancestral file, and then everybody had their own family tree on FamilySearch.
Yeah.
And so then in 2009, so that's only 16 years ago, they merged all those databases and created the new FamilySearch and one family tree. And that caused a lot of rifts in it. There were some people excited about it, some people not excited about it.
Yeah.
It was a crazy time in trying to clean up that tree and make it work. And now it's working how it's supposed to be. And I remember sometime after 2009, sitting in a Sunday school class, and we were studying Doctrine and Covenants, section 128. And the Spirit testified to me that the one family tree on FamilySearch is what this prophecy in D&C section 128 is talking about. So I'm going to read verse 124. It says, "Behold, the great day of the Lord is at hand, and who can abide the day of his coming? And who can stand when he appeareth? And he shall purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Let us, therefore, as a church and a people, and as Latter-day Saints, offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. And let us present in his holy temple, when it is finished, a book containing the records of our dead, which shall be worthy of all acceptation." Family Search is that book.
Is the book. Yeah. That's so interesting that you say that because in August I'm actually going to do an episode about the book and what that entails. So I'm so see we're on the same wavelength. I
We
don't
are, we are.
I think
But
that's super
the
cool.
Spirit told me very strongly that it is the book. And this is the other thing that it told me. It talks about that as a church and a people, we are to present it to the Lord. And so I want everyone to understand that as an individual person, you are going to have to tell the Lord if your family is there and if it's correct. And I worry about my whole family that's going to say, well, Aunt Ruth did it. I'm sure it's fine.
Well, I think they're making it easier for the non-professional genealogist, right, to be able to stand and
Yes,
participate in that testimony. And I believe when it talks about they will be judged out of the books, I believe that's part of, and we'll get into that, but that's part of us because we are literal witnesses to the
yes.
fact
Because
that
yeah, I've been
that book
reading
is correct.
the whole section 128 is
Yeah.
about being witnesses and
Yes.
how to create this book and the need for multiple witnesses. But the very fact that this book is in its final stages, it's finally one document, is huge.
It's massive. Uh,
It's
President
huge.
Irene was in charge of trying to get this family search thing up and running. And I don't think that those involved in those early years, because I came in new.familysearch.org.
Mhm.
And even back then, it was still a little bit difficult for someone who wasn't a genealogist, but you just kind of, the Lord, you know, was involved in the process. And I had all of these thinning of the veil experiences because that was in the very beginning when I got involved. But I don't think that those people, and they kept checking back, is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? This was of such importance. And I don't think that those people involved, and I don't think we as members of the church understand the importance of not only doing the work, but creating the book of which we are going to be a part of. And maybe because you're saying this, I'm going to move the book episode up to next week. This will
Because
be a good follow up.
I love your philosophy of finding names, and the church focuses on finding names within the family search database. But my fear is who's missing from the
Exactly.
database.
Yeah.
And because they still need to be found and they
Yeah.
still need to be added. And so there's so many people that are like, well, my work's all done, but it's just done for who's there. Do you know who's missing?
It's actually
You
my
know,
favorite part. And I think when you're a beginner and you start within this process and you work to do the low-lying fruit, for lack of a better word, not that
right.
they're less
It's a
important,
start.
right? It's the start. But what I found is the favorite part for me is really searching and seeking and filling in that hole and finding those people that have been lost and not found yet. But because I made an effort and told God and asked God, how do you need help on the other side of the veil? Sometimes it's research.
Right.
Sometimes it takes
There's so,
learning, right?
mhm.
So I would say to all my listeners out there, if you received a name and you don't necessarily know where to place it, take some time and start to learn how to research out and maybe take the next steps going to your local family search library. And that is the whole reason why this Gathering Academy was started, is to help people take the next steps because we need so many more people focusing on the harder to find fruit than the
Yeah.
low lying fruit. But I believe that that is the hastening as well. Part of the hastening
Yeah.
is getting more people with eyes on it and more people excited about it. Because if you go into this without having the spirit, you get overwhelmed fairly quickly about all of the things, right?
Yeah.
But if you go into it with the spirit and the spirit of Elijah and with the focus of the Savior in the forefront, this work becomes sweet and satisfying, and you figure out that you can do a lot more than you think you could.
Yeah. And the Lord will direct your research.
Yeah.
So my pattern that I follow is that, I submit, I work in names of about 50 at a time. And then I do the temple work, and then I get down on my knees and I say, who's ready? Who needs to be found? Who's missing? What family do I need to focus on, etc. And I have a favorite family that's my brick wall that I've been working on for 40 years. And so I always start there because that's the one that I want to find. And so I did my last female endowment on Friday. So I'm at that point. I need another set. I need to get going. And so earlier this week, I said my prayer. I sat down at the computer and I said, I don't know who I'm supposed, I'm not feeling anything. So I'm going to start with my favorite family and I'm going to work on them. And I don't know how, but somehow I started there and I ended up, and that's on my grandma's side, and I ended up working on the Keys line again on my grandpa's side. I don't know how I got from point A to point B, but the Lord took me where they needed me.
Because you were willing and you sat down and you just started. And I think
because I sat down and I started.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And I didn't do what I wanted and what I thought needed to be done, but the Lord knew what needed to be done and who was ready, and he led me in a different direction. So just sit down and tell them that you're ready and you're willing. He will direct it.
Yeah. I love that advice because it's faith over fear, right? I think sometimes we have so much fear within this work, but if we sit down and just be intentional, the faith will carry us and the Lord will lead us because he is the one, and the Savior is the one that 100% want this work done and finished. They're waiting on us. It's not on them. And so they will move heaven and earth that their sons and their daughters, the one, will be found. So, how has your testimony in Jesus Christ changed because of your efforts, or gotten better because of your efforts in the gathering of Israel?
I would just say that I understand that he is the plan. I used to talk about the plan of salvation, the plan of happiness, and now it's just Jesus Christ. He is the plan. There is no other way, no other means, no. He loves us all. He loves our family. His atonement is what makes it all possible. Plain and simple, he is the plan, and he always has been. And the Lord, the Heavenly Father, knew that from the beginning. Jesus Christ is the chosen from the beginning to make it all possible, to make it all worthwhile, to take away all the pain, to change us, to become more like him. He has just taught me that he is the plan, and that I just need to build that relationship with him, and he will lead me to where I need to go and what I need to do.
I love that thought. What I ponder upon quite a bit is his suffering in Gethsemane was for everyone. It was for those spinsters, as you call them, who weren't able to get married or find a husband, and the pain that probably was for in their life. He suffered for the unimaginable pain of a mother losing an infant and not knowing where they are, or that they want to be back together with that person. There's so many pains and anxiety that goes along with being immortal. He literally suffered for every single one of us, including those who are still missing. And as we find the missing ones, he will hasten our work in not only finding them, but finding him in the process. That's my testimony and your testimony, that you will find him in this process, because this is his work and this is his glory. And we add, if we want to participate in the work, we can attain to glory with the Savior. And you feel after these people. You can feel just a little bit about what the suffering was all about when you realize the human depravity that happened because we're mortal. The more family history you do, the more you see that. So thank you for joining me. I am so glad that you brought into probably the forefront the excitement about getting involved research wise. And I'm going to take you up on that offer.
I'd be happy to.
Of doing how-to videos. Colette right now is working on some, but I think the more people, the merrier with that, because I don't think we can do videos fast enough for people who are beginners. And I've heard from so many people how they're excited about this different change in the podcast to really give them the tools that they need to move forward. And I have changed what I'm going to talk about next week. I will be talking about the book. And then after that, I will talk about the loss of infants and the doctrine related to that in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So there's so much coming up. I have a cool story tomorrow. Colette will get another how-to video out on Thursday and then another talk on Friday. So just, I guess, take a deep breath, my friends. I'm constantly having to, but we're grateful to Ruth today and her work in the gathering, and especially for those lost military members. I'll pray for you that you will have the ability to, because that is an important work in and of itself. And I'm grateful that someone is doing that, especially for those families. So is there anything last thing you want to say before we end?
Just thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Well, I've been excited for this for a little while because I love your perspective. So thank you for joining us, friends. Please use faith over fear when you're attempting to sit down and try to take your abilities to the next level. It's easier than it ever has been. And from the perspective of Ruth and I, we can testify that it's only going to get easier. So have a great week, my friends, and we'll see you tomorrow with a really, really cool story. It's going to be amazing, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Ruth.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll see ya. Bye.
Bye-bye.